Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, died today. Of course, when a human being dies, that's a very sad event. The death of a member of the monarchy is primarily a symbolic event, because what is the monarchy other than a symbol?
We have just received this information from Buckingham Palace. Let me repeat this news. It is with deep sorrow that Her Majesty the Queen has announced the death of her beloved husband, His Royal Highness the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh.
You can hear in the newscaster's tone the severity of the situation, the solemnity of the tone, because this is the British Broadcasting Corporation and this is the death of the sovereign's consort. In a sense, those of you that don't believe that myth is important, that story is important, that spirituality is important, you know, this information will be relayed differently in Chile or Algeria or even the United States of America. I know a range of people with a variety of emotions. I'm sure you do. Some people really feel like they've lost someone that meant a great deal to them, like almost like a de facto symbolic family member. The monarchy, I suppose, resource their psychic energy from our totemic sense that they are a first family. It's necessary with the monarchy that you feel a degree of affiliation, affinity and affection, but a sufficient amount of respect and distance to warrant the inequality necessarily engendered in that type of deep hierarchical relationship. I would never comment disrespectfully on the death of anybody, and like anybody offer condolences and commiserations. Not that I'm sure that nobody requires that, although that means anything in particular to the people most affected. I feel what's interesting in this moment is we are obviously undergoing a period of revision around the monarchy's role in cultural life. Perhaps we are continually reviewing the role of the monarchy in cultural life. And this suggests that we are continually trying to negotiate and understand the meaning of power. The Harry and Meghan and Oprah Winfrey conversation created a sort of intergenerational conflict, and I think that is a curious thing. And I think it's impossible to imagine that affection for the royal family will continue when Her Majesty the Queen of England dies, and now of course Philip has passed. It's difficult to imagine that that institution will maintain the kind of bond that it has enjoyed with its subjects. Charles, it seems to me, from a kind of just anecdotal conversational understanding, doesn't have the kind of affection that Queen Elizabeth has. She's a person who's been present through most of our lives. She exists as a kind of demigod, which is the sort of role of a monarch. They are anointed by God. There are moments even in the filmed coronation that are too sacred to be filmed. Check that stuff out. It involves the application of oils, anointment. Anointing means you are divinely appointed. What I suppose I'm saying is that with the royal family you are dealing in myth and symbols. Whilst there are economic realities and power realities wrapped up in the monarchy, you are dealing with an entirely symbolic situation, even though that symbol does also entail, as recent revelations in The Guardian unpacked, actual power. The most significant thing for me about the passing of Prince Philip is that it means that as he passes, as Her Majesty the Queen passes, we will obviously, due to the nature of entropy, lose a generation of believers, and it's unlikely that subsequent generations will have the same affection. That's why the Harry-Meghan situation is challenging for that institution, because it means that new symbolic power bases are being formed. One could argue that this is a process that's been happening for a long time. The rise of celebrity culture, particularly deracinated celebrity that's not associated with a particular sport or entertainment milieu, like say for example the Kardashians, shows that people are willing to project their affection and attention onto celebrities. The monarchy is necessary in order that a country of our size, I'm talking obviously I mean inhabitants of the UK, so that you can have a centralized sense of self. When you get rid of the monarchy, you end up with a de facto monarchy in republics. You know, the president's family still have to do, look, we've got a cat. You know, they do stuff like that, don't they? This is the cat. We're like you. You got a cat, we got cat. You know, you have to fulfill the same essential role. And in American politics, you don't need me to point out that the names Clinton, Bush, potentially Obama again, and maybe even Trump might have kind of lineages, and all of that's been predated by the Kennedys. People kind of like aristocracy. By that I mean like enjoy the appeal of an elite class that can take care of how power is administered. I believe that, and in my conversation yesterday with Edward Snowden, I had this idea confirmed that now that we have the technology to communicate en masse immediately, can create new types of alliance, it's curious that we are living in a time of distraction and conflict, continual combat. One might posit that that is because the possibility finally exists for new meaningful alliances that would negate the necessity for centralized power and centralized image systems. Therefore, the death of Philip becomes significant because were there the will, were there the collective desire, we're moving towards a time where people could establish different systems of identification, different alliances, different forms of power. It could mean more than the death of Philip. It could be the beginning of the death of the monarchy. I'm not saying that in isolation. I'm saying it because it's been predated by like Diana 20 years ago, Meghan and Harry. The royal family no longer has that kind of necessary blend, that alchemic coating of mystique and authority. You know, for example, me being necessarily respectful for Prince Philip and the loss of people that loved him, whether you knew him or not, is because if that for me comes from a humanitarian perspective rather than a royalist perspective. I've never felt any particular connection to authority structures. I've usually been adversarial, and any affection I feel for the royal family comes from knowing people and being married to someone who likes the royal family, and from watching a TV show like The Crown, because it humanized the royals. It didn't make them seem more remote, it made them seem more accessible. So of course I'd be respectful. I would never be cynical or dismissive about the death of any other human being. You'll be able to tell a lot about a person by how they're affected by this, is what I would say. People that are deeply affected likely feel affection, obviously feel affection for the establishment and for the monarchy. That's not necessarily about class. My grandmother, for example, born in Stepney, lived in Dagenham. These are both working class communities for people that don't know, and like loved the royal family in a way that I kind of felt it. But again, she had a different kind of life where there were wars, where they had the royal family walking amidst the rubble in the blitzed East End. There is a reason that some people feel very sad and affected today, and a reason that other people will feel indifferent. Me, as a person who has this platform as a cultural commentator, I feel sort of respect and sadness and offer condolences to anybody who feels inclined to receive them. And from an analytical perspective, I know that this is likely coming at a time where our attitude towards power is being revised, and it will be interesting. But of course, the real significant event that awaits us all is the death of the matriarch, because I think it will be very, very hard for any of us to be indifferent about an event that seismic. This will be a time when we have to finally review, well, what is our attachment to that family? There is a degree of ambivalence around Charles, even among people that adore the older generation. Note significantly that when in the Harry and Meghan interview, they said there were like racist comments, Harry was quick to point out that it was neither Prince Philip or Elizabeth. I'm not suggesting that's either true or untrue. I'm saying it's significant that he said that, because the implication is that they are beyond reproach. They are inaccessible. They operate on a realm that you don't start to query or question. So this is a sad event for people that are affected by it, a significant event for all of us, because this is a time where we're all negotiating our relationship with power and how we want our lives to be organised. This is a time where there's a great deal of awareness of inequality, and where we recognise that symbolic roles assert a psychic control over public imagination. So an event such as this one is a time for reflection, a reflection on how you want society to be organised. And this is not to diminish or detract from the sadness that people who are personally or even psychologically affected may feel, simply to acknowledge there is another component to this, because there is always more than one component to an event of this magnitude. If you liked that video, then please feel free to like it and subscribe to the video. It really helps us if you do that. It helps more people to see this and helps more people to see the work that I do. Please, if you enjoy my content, go over to russellbrand.com and subscribe to our mailing list. I send out pretty regular bulletins. I've done lots of content on the royal family. If this kind of thing interests you, have a look at some of the playlists around that. And thank you very much.